Welcome to episode 7 of today's Candor. I'm your host, Barika. Thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to tune in. In this episode, I'll be discussing how real relationships, if you will, how they really last. And what we don't like to talk about, what we don't like to hear, what we don't like to really accept. Because we think that, especially my generation and younger, we think that relationships are just going to be always on the up and up. False. I want to give a shout out to starseed_999 on Instagram. I saw a post. I actually was going to do an episode on this a little down the road, but I said, let me go ahead and do it now. Let me read you what she posted on Instagram. This says here it was posted May 20th. But she has here, unpopular fact, most people don't want to hear this, but real relationships that last involve a lot of growth and forgiveness. You have to accept that your partner isn't perfect and may hurt or disappoint you. It's at that time where you have to figure out whether you're willing to go through this thing called love with them, ups and downs included. So this is so very true, because somehow, once again, these younger generations, we think that relationships are just everything is going to be cutesy and fun and, oh, you look so nice today. No, that's great. And before I really dive in, let me say, this episode is not meant for you to think that you shouldn't have discernment. This is not meant for It's not to say that you should allow people to take you for granted, to take advantage of you, for you to just take whatever and to just be stepped on and used and abused. That's not what this episode is about. This episode is about what I said it's about, where everything is all good when it is cutesy and your man or your lady is telling you, oh, you're so great at this, or you look so nice today, or this was so good. And those things are lovely. We're supposed to do those things. We are supposed to be appreciative. We are supposed to say it out loud, show it, and mean it. But we have to understand that with all the cute stuff there's going to be times that hurt. There's going to be disappointment. There's going to be disagreements. There shouldn't be blowouts. And maybe that's just my opinion. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that with anyone. But we get so caught up. We fight for everything else. We fight for our jobs. We fight for our best friends. We can find an apology, or we can push our pride to the side for everything except for our other half. And why is that? Your job, you'll say, I'm not going to ruffle the feathers, not really going to say much to my supervisor, for example, right? You might not say too much to your supervisor because you don't want there to be too much backlash, or are there going to be negative consequences. But you'll fight for your job, because that also may be your only stream of income. And hey, I get it. Some of us are thinking, if I don't do X, I'm going to be in a bind in the next couple weeks. Because fact is, most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, right? So we fight for everything else. If our best friend does us wrong, we are begging for them to forgive us or listen to us, or can you understand me? But if your other half, or even just, let's say, even if you are just starting to date this person and you're not at that point where, they are your other half and they're your heart and all the cute stuff. I love all the cutesy stuff, but I understand that there's another piece to it too. So we'll fight for all of that. But if the person that you're with or you're getting to know does one thing wrong, once again, not you accepting disrespect and being taken advantage of. We're talking about the fact that everyone is flawed. Everyone is flawed. And somehow people don't get this. And it's like, you're flawed too. It's like we don't understand that we're flawed ourselves. But for some reason, when the other person does something that upsets us, threw us off, turned us off, upset us, made us disappointed, I don't want to talk to you right now. When we get in that mode, instead of it just being like, hey, can you give me a little bit to breathe and then we can discuss? It's, I'm not talking to you anymore. Oh, like literally, we're cutting the person off. We are blocking them on the phone. We're blocking their phone number. We might be blocking them on social media, all the shenanigans, right? But it's like, you weren't that bold. You weren't that bold with your best friend who did something stupid. It might have done something worse. You definitely weren't that bold at your job. You weren't kicking them to the curb because you need that next paycheck that's coming in. Fine, so be it. And, you might not have been that bold with whoever else that you're dealing with. And my thing is, why not just communicate? What's the problem? Because no matter who you're dating or no matter who you end up actually going further with, whether it's, into a long-term relationship, a marriage, whatever the case, that person is going to make you mad, upset you, disappoint you. We all have different things, of course, that turn us off. So what may be very small for me is not very small for the next person. That's fine. Of course, you have to figure out what you can and cannot tolerate. That is a given. But the other given should be that when you start dating, talking to whatever this relationship, this generation wants to call the relationship, air quotes, but once you start dating, you have to, what comes with it when you're getting to know someone is, okay, like this person is going to do something. This person is going to do something that throws me off, or you may be taken aback, or you may feel away. But communicate, talk about it, discuss it like adults. Sit down and say, hey, you know what you did the other day? Can you maybe explain why you did that? Because also the person, if nobody in their past has ever told them like that, they don't like that, or could they work on that flaw, that trait, that characteristic, whatever, they've just been coasting through, the relationships and dating, and they may not know. So sometimes it's just as small as, let's have a talk. But with anyone that you choose to date or once again, further a relationship with, you're going to go through the ups and downs. That is just a part of being together. That's a part of love. That you may not like that person that day. It's normal. But if every time somebody upsets you, disappoints you, whatever the case may be, if every time that happens, you choose to push that person away and you're done with them, you'll end up alone. You'll end up alone. And who's to say that you're perfect? Why do you feel like, because you might be getting on their nerves and they're just dealing with it better. They might not need to bring up every little thing to you. So when I find that people are doing this, that they are always pushing this person or the person to the side or blocking them, or it's like, have you reevaluated? Have you looked within yourself? It's not to say that you shouldn't have the conversation and communicate with the other party, but have you also looked within yourself and said, why is this upsetting me so much? Because you have to ask, are you overreacting? Also ask, if this is becoming habitual, if this is a pattern of yours, you have to also ask, why does this keep happening? Why, when I start getting to know someone, the minute that they do something that doesn't tickle my fancy, the minute they do that, why am I so irritated? Why am I 1 to 1,000 the first time? Instead of just saying, hey, can we talk? Something you did threw me off. So how about looking within, especially if you're noticing that it's a pattern? But people won't do that. People won't look within. They won't notice it's a pattern. They'll just be like, oh, I keep meeting the wrong people. No, ma'am, no, sir. You might also need to You might also need to figure out what's going on with you, because it can't be that every person you're meeting is off. Maybe the first couple of times, okay, you all just didn't mesh. We get it. You're not going to be compatible. Some people are an acquired taste. Some people aren't just, we met, we got to know each other, we clicked. I get it. But what are you doing that you have to look within? I'm a firm believer that it can't always be the other person, especially if it's a pattern. But that's what comes with it. That's what comes with love and relationships and dating, is that it's going to be cutesy, and then it's going to be you get on my nerves. It's going to be a mixture. It's not going to be that it's all cutesy and then you get on my nerves, and then it's going to be ups and downs and ups and downs. That's going to go back and forth. It's supposed to be, of course, more better times than that outweigh the not so great times. Of course, it's supposed to be that. Of course, it should be you make me happy, you make me smile more than you piss me off or upset me or hurt me, disappoint me. Of course, that's not supposed to be a continuous thing, but it's going to happen. And when people go into dating, I am always baffled when people go into dating with this attitude that they are the best thing since sliced bread. You can be confident. You're supposed to be. You're supposed to have high self-esteem. But being confident and having high self-esteem is not the same as you thinking that you're untouchable and that you can't hurt someone or you can't bother someone, turn them off. You absolutely can. So every time I hear people saying, because there are some people I have talked to, met some people who are just, they are very much, it's just always the other person. You sure? Because sometimes people are so beside themselves and have not arrived yet, apparently. But look within. Dig deeper. What are you doing? Why are you what's so great about you that you can keep blocking and cutting people off and doing this and that? It's not about settling. It's not about accepting. It's not about getting taken advantage of. It's not about that. But we have to accept that we're flawed as well, not just the person that we are trying to get to know or already with. Because 9 times out of 10, when you think that you're going over to the other side and you think it's that grass is greener, that's not always the case. It's not telling you to put up with anything. I will tell you, my tolerance and patience for shenanigans and BS, absolutely not. But everybody is going to have something that just ticks you off. Is it something that you can tolerate, or is it a deal breaker? That's the other thing that people get mixed up and they're not the same. A flaw and a deal breaker are 2 different things. Like for me, you can't be dirty. You absolutely cannot. That is a deal breaker. We are not doing anything. So, and that's everything. That's from personal hygiene, your house, your car. If you're dirty, that's a deal breaker. We have nothing to talk about. That's me. But a flaw for me is I'm a communicator. I like to consider myself a communicator. I like to say it's one of my strong suits. A flaw for me is a person that doesn't communicate well. If it's just off the chain, like you just don't know how to communicate, you don't even want to try, you don't want to better yourself in that way, that is a deal breaker. I can't do that. You don't even want to try to improve it. That is a deal breaker. But if your communication is not as great as mine, and I come to you and say, look, this is not great. Can we work on this? I'm going to help you work on it. And you're willing to try. I can do that. I can work with that. That's a flaw. And once again, I'm just speaking about for me. But you have to figure that out. You have to be able to say, what is a flaw for me? What are flaws? List them. I think I have said in almost every episode, get a sheet of paper. List what are flaws to you. I'm not asking you to sit there and make a list of 100, but list them. You know them when you start dating someone, so you have to know them off the top of your head, right? List what you love in a person. Let's also go positive. But list, next to those flaws, list what are deal breakers, because they are two different things. Don't believe me? Once you start writing them down, you'll see. Two absolutely different things. So once you figure that out, once you dive in, figure yourself out and write it down and maybe come to terms with, oh, that really is just a flaw. That's not something that is block worthy. Because when I was still doing the dating, and yes, although I'm not married, my honey knows I am we are done. We are done. No more for me. I am done. I wouldn't even want to be out here doing whatever this is, because my friends who are still dating, God bless their souls. So I am glad that I am not on the dating scene, but you have to dive in. When I was still figuring things out, dating, mingling, whatever you want to call it, I would I knew what were flaws and deal breakers for me. I knew that. But I have an old soul, and I just know, these things just came to me very quickly. But I also know that I'm not perfect. So I understood when I was figuring those things out. I understood when I was still trying to get to know men. I already knew what turned me off. I knew what I didn't like. I knew what I could deal with. I know my flaws. I also know what I need and what I want. See, that's the other thing. Not only are people they're not self-aware, they don't understand discernment, but people also don't understand themselves, if you will. To know yourself, of course, but are you very self-aware? Do you know what upsets you? Not just at the very surface, but do you really understand what upsets you, what disappoints you, what hurts you, what hurts your feelings? Throw the pride away, throw the ego out the window, because it gets you nowhere. And really try to really make it your business to, once again, write that down. What makes you feel really good? When a person does X, what does that, make your mind do? How do you feel? And when they do the opposite. So that's the other thing, is that a lot of us don't know what we want going into a relationship, or even just that first dating stage where we are getting to know someone. We don't know. We'll sit there and tell you, I want a good man that has a good job. What does that mean? What does that mean? Because honestly, what is this, the good job stuff, that has a totally different connotation from just years ago. But what does that even mean? Like, we don't really dive in and say, this is what I need from a partner. Because some of us also aren't looking at relationships as partnerships. We're just looking at it as, I can't even tell you the things I've heard from people. It's supposed to be a partnership. I won't go into that right now. But part of that soul searching, part of that figuring out what we can and can't tolerate, is that we have to know what we are doing. What do I want? Ask yourself, what do you want? Because have you really figured that out? Or have you just been going and dating person to person, but you don't even understand you? Do you really understand what ticks you off? Do you really understand what hurts your feelings? And that's why I said, put the pride and the ego to the side so that you can understand it, instead of trying to just say, oh, well, I don't like when a person doesn't call me back. Okay, what are we in the 12th grade? So you have to really get in there and flesh that out. Really get in there and flesh that out. Get in there and figure out what makes you feel good and what upsets you. Have some discernment. Be able to have some that self-awareness. It's deeper than just figuring out a favorite color, what you like to eat. Really get in there and figure out. Also, pull from past relationships. Pull from past relationships, or just even if it didn't turn into a relationship, just past situations of things that take really, really get in there and take notice. Understand what was going on, because that's being mature. Being able to look back and say, what was I doing? Not only what was that person doing, but what was I doing that, did I maybe contribute to it not being a great situation? What was I doing? We don't want to do the I. We want to point the finger all the time, and that person doesn't know what they're doing. This person didn't do this. That's that ego. That's that ego talking. So really get in there. And when you're doing that, what's wrong with even asking? Also ask people, what do you really like? What is something that makes you feel good? Of course, pay attention to people, because noticing the little things, a lot of people like that. And people don't understand that. But really pay attention, but also have these conversations. But I think what is happening here is yes, of course, it is that we don't want to communicate with the other person. We don't understand that communication is the foundation of any relationship, not just intimate relationships. But communication is literally key. If you can't do that, of course, along with some other very significant things, but if you can't communicate with the one that you are either trying to get to know or the one that you already love, there's nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing. You will have nothing to talk about. It's not going to work. How are you even going to make it work? You're going to always trying to be putting a Band-Aid on something instead of really fixing the issue, correcting the issue. Correct it. Stop putting a Band-Aid on it. Correct the issue. Talk about it. What did I do to you? What made you feel this way? And yes, sometimes you have to take a step back. You might not want to talk about it when it happens or an hour later, because especially if it was something that maybe cut you deep. You might say, can we speak about it a little bit later? Can we speak about it tomorrow? Can I get my thoughts together? That's fine too. Stop doing this fast moving. Everything doesn't have to be right then. Stop doing this fast paced moving of, I'm blocking you. No. Let's talk. If someone says, I don't want to talk right now, fine. Respect their space. But people literally don't know how to treat someone that they are trying to date, get to know, be in a relationship, whatever. You have to understand it comes with ups and downs. Nothing and no one is perfect. So trying to force that issue, and every time someone does something that you don't like, it's cutting them instead of just having a conversation. I don't like that. I wouldn't like if somebody did that to me. That's wild to me. It's childish and petty. So I don't understand when people are doing that. I don't. And I won't understand it because my mind does. I'm not wired that way. But if you can fight for your friendships, your relationships with, your girls or your boys, if they are so important, how about the person that you're trying to get to know or already with? Why is that not as important? Your friends, of course, should be important. But that person that you're with, especially once you're in love, fight. Give it some fight. It's not to say you should be stressed out. It's not to say that your blood pressure should be up. It's not to say that it should be happening all the time, because if it's happening all the time, there's a compatibility issue and someone is not meant to be. But we are just talking about the normal ups and downs that come with a relationship, because regardless, you all are two individuals. You do not think alike. You have compatibility. You have similarities. You have these things. Even it doesn't matter how much you're aligned. If you believe in soulmates, it doesn't matter how much you're aligned. You are going to be disappointed by that person, and you're going to disappoint them. We never look at it from that angle. It's baffling to me. People will get into a disagreement and say, he or she did this. Okay. Did you think about your side too? And if you didn't do anything, that's perfectly fine. It's not always that you did, but think about how you approach the situation, because approach matters. Not what you said, how you said it. Timing. People aren't cognizant of these things. They just go right in and start. How about asking people, hey, I wanted to talk about something that happened the other day. Is now a good time? Not just, oh, I'm talking about it because I'm mad. So these relationships are going to be ups and downs. And love, it's what love comes with. But if I love you so much, I'm going to fight for us. Like I said, it's not about being stressed out. Maybe people are getting that term, like fighting for your relationship or fighting for the person you love. Maybe they're getting it misconstrued. Nobody's asking you to be stressed. But simply just, hey, what can I do? What can we do to make this better? But relationships last, because the ones that last and the ones that are good, we're not talking about last and it's still rocky and they shouldn't have been together years ago. They should have called it off. The relationships that are great, it's wholesome, they are aligned, the love is real, it's a partnership. Those people that go through those things, they have figured out how to go through it together, how to work through it together, instead of playing the blame game, instead of being disrespectful, instead of blocking, calling it off. But the only way you can even get to that point, the only way you can get there, you have to figure it out in the beginning. People don't want to do that front end work of figuring out and learning a person. They want to jump right to, our relationship is so great and we've been together for years. You can't get there without doing A, B, and C. And I can talk about this because as every relationship has its ups and downs, mine has. We figured it out. You have to do that. And people don't think about where that person has come from, their previous relationships, their upbringing. What were they seeing coming up? Was mom and dad, were they good? Were they arguing all the time? Was their mom and dad? Was it a single parent home? We don't get into that stuff and really learn a person and read them and talk to them about who they are. We just say, oh, I don't like what you did. It's done. What is that? Then you'll never have a real relationship, or once again, you'll just be alone. And if you're okay with that, fine, keep doing what you're doing. But that goes back to part of what I said in one of my previous episodes, my 4th episode, talking about learning your person, loving your person, instead of being so caught up, being tradition-y. Love your person, learn them, understand them, and for them to do the same with you, because it's a two-way street. That's the only way it can be a partnership. But if every little thing is ticking you off and you can't deal and this is that, what are you going to do? Keep just running through people? Keep blocking people? Keep cutting people off? It does you no good. You need to learn who you are. Maybe take a step back. That reevaluating, that looking in the mirror, it's hard. So with that, I'll end. Thank you so much as always for taking the time to tune in. Please continue to follow, like, and share the podcast. It's on all major podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and more. Continue to connect with me on at today's Candor on Instagram. Please let me know if there are any topics you would like to hear my perspective on. Until next time, stay safe, and stay candid.